we cannot teach our kids how to compete with machines. Machines will be smarter. This is what Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, said. Many economists believe generative AI could replace up to 300 million jobs globally. Good news, machines are going to create more jobs than they destroy. And the perfect example to illustrate it is Alibaba. In 20 years, Alibaba could create 30 million jobs and is willing to create 100 million in the next decade. Since I started talking to you, more than 100 new jobs have been created by the technology. Technology will not kill our jobs. It will make them even more interesting. The question is not to know which job we will do tomorrow, but which skills we need for any job tomorrow. During 6 years, I had the great chance to live and work in China, including 4 years at Alibaba. During that experience, I could have a unique vision and projection of which skills the world will need in the 10 years to come. And I discovered one thing. Our brain has a surprising power to rewire our way of learning, our way of socializing, and our way of creating. This quote from Jack Ma was recorded 5 years ago, and his words still apply even more today. We need to teach our kids what computers cannot do. But why am I talking to you about Jack Ma? Because he's the leader that inspires me the most. He's a model of success. He started his career as an English teacher with zero experience and knowledge about technology or IT, and he founded one of the world's largest tech companies and became one of the richest men in China. I remember the first time I met Jack was in Hangzhou, China in 2014, during the welcoming ceremony of the new Alibaba employees. During that event, he shared one of the most emblematic and inspiring sentences. He said, everyone should have a good IQ, a good EQ, and a good LQ. IQ is the intelligence quotient. It's what is in our brain, where we hold the knowledge, what we learn at school, business management, engineering, architecture, coding. EQ is the emotional quotient. It's how we connect with each other, how we empower people. And in Chinese, we call it guanxi, meaning relationships and connections. And then the LQ, the love quotient. And it's all about values and passion. Passion for life, passion for work, passion for people. And this is where machines cannot compete with us. And this is how we can be different from them today and in 20 years. Let's start with the IQ and rewiring the way we learn. I once shared this graph with my business school students, asking them what does it represent. I got very funny answers, like the increase of the price of the Bitcoin, or the increase of the price of the pasta in the supermarket. But the right title for this graph is the evolution of my Mandarin Chinese level without taking any classes. See, our brain is definitely capable of doing amazing things. Let me explain. When I first joined Alipay as the first non-Chinese employee in China, I was writing most of my emails in English. And one day, my supervisor, Lina, told me that no one understands my emails and I had to write them in Chinese. Terrible. At that time, I was not speaking Chinese. And if I had to follow the classic academic path, it would take me 7 years, 5,000 hours of learning to become fluent. I would have definitely lost my job at Alibaba. So I had to find an easy, quick, and efficient way to learn. Easy is about deconstructing the myth that it's hard. Quick is about finding our own way to learn. And efficient is about focusing on what is strictly necessary. I will now show you how I applied this magic method to become fluent in Chinese in less than a year. Let's start with easy. And I have a question for you. Please raise your hand if you think that Chinese is a difficult language. Wow, roughly 90% of the room think it is. Well, among my friends who tried to learn Chinese, 8 out of 10 stopped learning because they thought it was too difficult. I will now prove you that Chinese is not a difficult language. It's even easier than French or Spanish. First, Chinese has no alphabet, no conjugation, and its grammar is relatively simple, like Thai or Malay. Second, memorizing Chinese characters is easier than what you think. In general, when we say that we learn Chinese, people think that we have to learn perfectly 10,000 random pictures, and each picture with 15 different meanings. In fact, there are many characters very easy to memorize and recognize. Look at these 4 characters. Huo for fire, Ko for mouse. They can seem a bit difficult to remember and recognize at the beginning, but look closer. They're all images, and therefore our brain can easily recognize them. And you know what? You can even construct new words by combining existing characters. For example, fire, mountain, huo shan, meaning volcano. Of course, not the 10,000 characters are made of images, and in fact, you only need to know 3,000 characters to become fluent in Chinese. But I personally didn't know it was that easy to learn Chinese until I deconstructed the myth that it's hard. So let's continue with quick. To learn quickly, we have to find our own way to learn by immersing ourselves with Chinese speakers. So my advice to learn quickly is to fake it until you make it. So learning some words like will make Chinese people think you speak like them. For example, yo bi, or jiu jiu liu, or zhongguo tong. These words will systematically make Chinese people think you understand their culture. So immersing yourself with Chinese speakers is the quickest way you can learn a language. But now, how to become efficient to learn a language? It's by focusing on what is strictly necessary. For me, the strict necessary was to learn the Fintech vocabulary in Chinese, to be able to hold meetings, to manage a team, to write reports in Chinese. It was not to know how to read a menu in a restaurant. And to be honest, I don't even know how to write my name in Chinese. But I know how to type it on a computer or a phone. How many of us have already used handwriting the past week? I'm sure many did not. So handwriting and handwritten characters are less used than before. And you can see here that you can easily use the pinyin, which is the transcriptions of Latin letters into Chinese characters. So you don't necessarily need to be able to draw the character in order to learn it, but you only need to know how to recognize it in order to type it. So here, definitely, technology helped me to learn Chinese. To sum up, in order to rewire the way we learn, we need to use the EQE method. Easy, quick, efficient. I showed you how I applied this method to learn Chinese, but you can use it to learn any other language, any topic. I used it to learn the basics of piano. Easy, deconstructing the myth that it's hard. So, for example, using accessible resources like YouTube videos, watching Instagram accounts, watching other people playing. Quick, finding my own way to learn, putting post-its and stickers on the piano keyboard, bypassing the solfeggio classes. And efficient, focusing on what is strictly necessary, 4 chords only to learn 500 songs. And this is how I could develop the way I rewire my way of learning. And this is what we call the emotional quotient. We are creators of emotion, and not creators of logic. This quote from Dale Carnegie a famous American writer who made myself rewire the way I socialize. He wrote one of the most inspiring and emblematic books called How to Win Friends and Influence Others. In his books, he shares 30 principles of how to win friends and influence people, very basic but essential. The power of smile, of silence, of listening, of encouragement, positive mindset. And if I had to summarize those 30 principles, I would use the word adaptability. It is definitely a must-have skill nowadays. We all need to adapt. We need to change a school, we change a house, we change a job. And I would like to share with you an anecdote on when I had to rewire the way I socialize and I had to adapt. When I was hired at Alibaba, I was supposed to work in marketing. But after a few months, I always replied with a lot of confusion. When people were asking me, I was saying that I was working in marketing, business development, user experience, strategy, etc. I was basically doing everything at Alibaba, except maybe working in the canteen. In fact, in 4 years, I have changed more than 10 times teams. I had to join a new team every 5 months in average. And every time I had to adapt to a new team, new environment, new people. So the most challenging experience for me to adapt was not really in China, because that's where I started my career. In fact, it was when I was back in France. And it's what we call the reverse culture shock. Because I lived so long in China that I embraced the culture. And I was used to the business codes from China, so asking private questions to random people I meet, like, did you buy an apartment? How much do you make a month? Etc. were for me very normal questions, but in France it was not the case. So I had to readapt to my home culture, and again, I knew that I had to rewire the way I socialized because I was not in my comfort zone. So in order to adapt to a new environment, my mindset is that I start everything from scratch. By being curious, understanding people around me, what they are doing, how they interact with each other, trying to see people also in terms of open-mindedness, without having preconceptions about them, trying to be humble without thinking that my experience is better than theirs, and by being resilient, not fearing to fail, and never give up. And this is EQ. When we have a good EQ and a good IQ, we can easily innovate. But there is no innovation without creativity. So how can we define creativity? It's all about transforming ideas into reality. Machines can easily do repetitive jobs, but they cannot replace us to create ideas from scratch and bring them into life. These are some major technologies, and the time it took for them to reach 50 million users. 68 years for the airplanes, 12 years for the cell phones, and only 2 months for ChatGPT. Technology will move faster than what we are used to. That's why we need the creativity to be different than machines. When working on creativity, we're always asked to think out of the box. Do we really know what it means? In fact, we don't have the perfect framework or formula on creativity. Albert Einstein defines it as the intelligence having fun. Machines are binary. Creativity is not. In fact, everyone can be creative. It's just a matter of how we interpret it. For example, organizing a trip to Morocco with your friends, or decorating your new home in Paris, or organizing this event at HEC. It's all about creativity. Creativity is not about finding the new cool idea or putting innovation in your strategy, but it's about finding the right people with passion. There is no creativity without passion. And here comes the LQ, the love quotient. At Alibaba, a part of my performance evaluation was based on my LQ. These values I commonly share with the company. We can compare it with the Googliness at Google. These personality attributes that make you the right cultural fit as a Googler. Finding our passion is finding our ikigai. This Japanese concept, meaning the purpose of life. I'm sure a lot of you already know it, but it's a combination of 4 things: what we love, what we are good at, what the world needs, and what we can be paid for. My ikigai is teaching. On top of my job in Fintech, I'm passionate about teaching, sharing knowledge to my students, inspiring them, getting inspired by them. I find this passion in every job I do, from being an entrepreneur, consultant, teacher, and today as a Fintech specialist. It's a combination of creativity, adaptability, and learning. When I was 20, I didn't know which job I will do in 10 years. Today, I still don't know which job I will do in 10 years. According to Yuval Noah Harari in his book called 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, no one can predict which job we'll do in 10 years. In order to survive against machine learning, AI, blockchain, and all these emerging technologies that are disrupting our world and habits, we urgently need to rewire our way of learning by using the EQE method, our way of socializing by being adaptable, and our way of creating by finding our passion. In fact, that's the only way we can be different than machines, because we cannot compete with them. Thank you.